Why aren't we talking about the declining birth rate more in the UK?
So how many of y'all made it to 40 with kids, but no grandkids?
By 2050, over 3/4 of countries won't have high enough fertility rates to keep their population size growing. The global fertility rate has decreased from 4.84 live births per woman in 1950 to 2.2 in 2021, and is expected to drop to 1.5 by 2100.
It's Mother's Day here in the UK today, and I've been feeling really compelled that I want to jump on and send a message to midlife women that don't have children, that aren't mothers. And whether that's through a choice, like it is for me, or whether it just hasn't happened for you, I really wanted to acknowledge you today from my heart to yours, that it can be particularly triggering. It can be triggering on any day, but when we see mothers being celebrated, as they should be, celebrated, it can really bring home that we don't have children. And I think particularly at midlife, as we're coming to the end of our reproductive years, whether we've been able to have children or not, it can cause a lot of grief.
Welcome to Blighty Blighted, your daily reminder that one of the biggest changes in Britain isn't what we're talking about. It's what isn't happening. Babies, families, marriage, children, the things that used to be considered a normal part of life. Now, before anyone starts shouting at their television, I'm not saying everybody should get married. I'm not saying everybody should have children. I'm saying something has clearly changed.
Rates in the UK fall to a record low, but that's not the surprising thing. Well, I say surprising, but not really. 40% of births in the UK are now from one or both parents being foreign born. I'm not that surprised. I thought it'd be a lot higher. I'm all for immigration, I'm all for diversity, but not to the point where the UK is unrecognisable to what it actually was. And I would say the same thing with every country and their own people. So I'm not biased because it's the UK. And I have never said once on my channel that I'm against diversity or immigration. Not once. Okay, if you go back on all my videos, you'll know exactly where I stand with that. So before you cunts start leaving your comments. Cunt trolls, I mean. I'm not generalising.
Do you want kids? If not, why?
50-50, and that's just because I love travel, and I see them as a bit of a restriction towards travel.
I'm yes, but not now. Like probably within the next 5-ish years or so.
I do want kids. I think I'm quite maternal. Also, I'm really pretty, so I feel like I'd have great children.
Definitely not. It's kind of a thankless task where women are expected to give up absolutely everything. Their income, their social life, their body.
I would love kids. Having a mini-me. Is that a bit narcissistic? I feel like that's a bit... No?
I want a mini-me.
I would love a mini-me.
General state of the world doesn't really give me a lot of confidence in bringing new life into the world at the moment.
I mean, the idea of giving birth absolutely terrifies me. I do not want kids. I want my full freedom in my money and my time.
I do one day, not now, but at some point when I'm a bit older.
The UK birth rate's in free-for-all. That's why we need migration. We need lots of migrants. This is because British mothers are producing an average of 1.44 children, and that the average age of a mother has crept up from 26 to 30, almost 31. What does this mean? It means that without migration, the UK faces an ageing population, a population that will at some stage retire, a population that is living longer. In 10, 20, 30 years' time, without migration, the UK faces a massive problem. Who's going to pay for the old people? The answer, migration, and yet more migration. Well, that's if the country wants to carry on growing or has an aspiration to grow. It's a surprising result, but there you have it. There is a way to rebut this or stop this from happening, but this is a family show and I'm not going to talk about it.
Recently, me and Mr. Douglas von Smugglers here have been seeing many articles about the sudden decline in birth rate. Why are less and less people having children these days? Okay, there's been much speculation, no one knows why, but I'm here to tell you the real reason why. Okay, the real reason no one's having kids these days is because of these guys right here. Dogs. Okay, they are so much easier. Why would you want to get up at 5 a.m, Dougs, to a crying child? This guy will sleep in till 10, 11 a.m. Okay, I have to wake him up. And don't get me wrong, he is like a child. Okay, he's very needy, he's very clingy. He does require 24/7 attention, but I don't mind it because he gives all the love. He gives all the loyalty. Okay, it's very simple, isn't it, Dougs? We wake up, we go for a walk, we eat our breakfast, and we have a good time. Okay, life is simple, life is good.
Which immigrants are having the most babies born in the UK? For context, there were approximately 600,000 live births in the UK last year, and about 34% of them were to mothers born outside the UK, and about 40% involved at least one non-UK born parent. So which immigrants are having the most babies? Starting off at number 5, we have Bangladeshi, accounting for about 1.7% of the births. Coming in at number 4 are the Romanians, accounting for about 2% of the births. Moving to number 3, there are Nigerians, making up about 2.5% of the births. At number 2, there are Pakistanis, accounting for about 3.6% of the births. Can you guess the number 1 spot on this list? Well, the immigrants having the most babies in the UK, accounting for about 4.4% of the births, are the Indians. This list is based on official 2024 data from the Office for National Statistics, England and Wales. Figures may differ slightly for the whole UK or future years.
The reality is the decline of white folk in England is a completely self-inflicted thing. Since the 1970s, we've been aborting towns worth of English people in England, and that's been done purely by English families without any pressure from anyone else. This is a self-inflicted injury, and migration, even in the past when it was more controlled, was as a result of a number of different factors. It's never just one issue. But one of them was the fact that we were not having enough children because we were aborting too many of our children and we were avoiding having lots of children. And so the thing is, I'm not with you on the whole 10% figure. I haven't got a number in my head. I don't mind, the genetic makeup of this country. What I care about is whether the people in it are adhering to a Judeo-Christian culture. And if that is an Anglophile culture, then fine. I'm open to that suggestion.
State pension age could be raised to 75 due to the UK's birth rate decline. Yeah, I've had enough. At the moment, the UK state pension age is 66 years old for both men and women. However, that is set to rise to 67 years old from April 2028 for those born after April 1961. However, for those of us born after April 1977, that is set to rise to 68 years old, subject to consultation. Now, as someone who is in the latter category, I somewhat doubt that I will be 68 years old when I claim my state pension. To be honest, I'm very much doubting I'll ever claim a state pension at all. Even if you do get the state pension, there is no guarantee that your quality of life will allow you to enjoy it. For most of us, we will move from good to bad health in our 60s, and that will vary on your gender, what job you do, and also where you live. The idea that someone can work for 50 plus years only to never properly enjoy the promise the state made to them is ridiculous and shows that our state pension system needs reforming. Now, I know this think tank cited reported that the UK's declining birth rate is the reason that state pension age is going up, so perhaps those in power could consider that maybe people would have more children if they could actually afford to do so. Perhaps if most of our paychecks weren't being divided up between HMRC, SFE and landlords, people would have more money that could go towards starting a family. Perhaps that's where they should start. Also, perhaps considering when we look at the current state of pensions, whether it's really viable to keep policies like the triple lock. Why should people be expected to fork out more of their wages to go towards wealthy pensioners when our own wages are not given the same level of security as pensions? It's ridiculous. Something has to change.
Folks, we're all spending more and more time on WhatsApp groups, often with catastrophic consequences, and I'm told that younger people, Generation Z, millennials, whatever, they're spending so much time on social media that they're no longer going to parties, they're not drinking as much as my generation used to do, and maybe that explains the striking fall in the birth rate. Is WhatsApp killing Western civilization? Read my column in the Daily Mail and click on the link in bio.
Null chance. Advice there from a man who can't even wear a fucking hat properly. So this man now thinks that social media is the reason that people are not having kids I mean, what the fuck is he talking about? Just proves how disconnected they are from the real world, these lot. Millionaires, MPs, all this shit. They haven't a clue. You never thought, has it never struck your mind that some people don't have kids because they just genuinely can't afford it, because it costs an absolute fortune to have a child or children. People are paying upwards of £600-800 per month to put the child in a fucking nursery, Boris. And let's not talk about the food, the clothes, all the stuff you need for a baby. A pram, you're talking £1,000, £2,000 for a pram. But no, it's all social media's fault, because we're not going to parties, we're not drinking. That is why the birth rates come down. I'd probably put it more to the fact that people are just working to survive at the moment. Never mind have another fucking child, Boris. I mean, the shite that comes out of these people's mouths. And people started liking him again. Fucking hell. Madness point.
Is it possible that in 100 years we could have a society solely consisting of right-leaning people, not because everyone changed their minds, but because the left stopped having kids? Probably not entirely, but the future does look like it's going to be much more conservative. Now, this might sound like a sci-fi thought experiment, but it's actually just simple demographics. It didn't used to be a partisan difference in terms of the rate in which people had children, but over the last 40 years, people who are on the left have stopped having children, whilst people who are more conservative, more on the right, have continued to have children at pretty much the same rate. Last week, we found out that UK birth rates have fallen to a record low, and the Financial Times has just released some new data showing that that's almost entirely down to a falling birth rate of those on the left. Now, because our political ideology does correspond with that of our parents, it's possible that society is just going to be getting more and more conservative, and we can actually already see that happening. This study looked at over 15 different European countries and found that not only did right-wing people have more children, but that the proportion of right-wing people in the population was increasing from generation to generation. Basically, whilst Liberals are busy debating childcare policy, the Conservatives are literally raising the next electorate. Now, the Financial Times article talks a lot about the potential consequences of this, but spends less time on what for me is the most important part, which is that progressive women in a lot of cases are having less children because of economics and inequality. This research paper looked at data from more than 130 countries and found that women take a massive earnings hit when they become mothers. They call this the child penalty. Careers stall, pay gaps open up, and promotions vanish. Now, that won't be a surprise to pretty much any woman watching this, but what was interesting was that they found that the UK had a larger child penalty than the US, Canada, and France. And also that the child penalty was larger in cities, which tend to have more left-leaning progressive people. If you're a high-achieving progressive woman who's worked really hard for her career, having kids can feel less like starting a family and more like pressing self-destruct on my CV. And when you add to that how expensive housing and childcare is, and the fact that women still do most of the unpaid housework, it's not a huge surprise that more left-leaning women might think, okay, maybe one child's enough, or maybe I don't want any at all. These aren't just personal choices about whether or not to have a kid, they're also influenced by the structural and the political factors around us. But the result is a slow, quiet demographic shift towards conservatism. Not necessarily because they won the argument, but because progressive women were too exhausted to have children.
Is it just me, or is anyone else worried about the falling birth rate and what it's going to do to our profession of teaching? And I'm not surprised this is happening. You have to be living under a rock to be surprised here. But total fertility rates in England and Wales is now 1.41 children per woman, lowest since records began in 1938. Third year running, it's hit a record low. The replacement rate, the number you'd need to keep the population steady without any immigration, is 2.1. We're nowhere near. The average age of first-time mums is now 31. 20 years ago, it was 29. The biggest drop is in the 25 to 29 bracket, which makes sense because look at the world we've built for them. Buying a house in your 20s is impossible. It's a fantasy. Childcare costs more than your rent. Maternity pay is a joke. A YouGov poll last year found 28% of 18 to 40-year-olds just don't want kids at all. A quarter of 18 to 25-year-olds say they definitely or probably won't. And honestly, who can blame them? What does that mean for us as teachers? Well, under 16s in England are forecast to fall by 6% over the next decade. Primary numbers dropping by around 75,000 a year for the next 3 years. The DfE have just cut trainee teacher targets by 23% and will keep going. You might be thinking, well, you know, fewer kids means smaller classes. That's a win, except no. Schools are funded per pupil. Fewer children means less money. Less money means fewer staff. Same class sizes, just with fewer adults around them. Now, councils in London are already looking at closures in some primary schools, the smaller schools, the ones serving the tightest communities. They'll be the first to fold because you can't get rid of staff fast enough to balance the books. Now, there'll be a version of this that the government will spin to make it look like a win, because that's what all governments do. You know, fewer pupils, fewer teachers, less spend, more money, or save money. It's lovely stuff. But think about it. We could have the teaching workforce age out, new entrants vanish, schools shut, communities lose their primary, the one place where everyone on an estate in a village will still meet and congregate every morning. And then in 15 years, when those small cohorts hit the workplace themselves, we've got a smaller tax base, an older population, an education system that hasn't a clue how to then scale back up. And I'm not going to pretend like I know what the fix is. I haven't a clue, but I think it could change the whole shape of the job and the schools we work in and the kids we teach. So yeah, I'm a bit worried. But what about you?
UK is failing. I live in the UK, and I'm going to say this for the very first time, that UK is failing. And why a lot of people will not say that UK is failing is because we are coming from a place that have failed and crumbled already. A place that have failed dreams. A place that have failed lives and have failed her citizens. That is why a lot of people will see UK as a safe haven. Especially those that are getting into UK in the last 2, 3, 5 years. You think it's a safe haven. No, it ain't. UK has failed drastically in so many ways, in terms of job, in terms of security, in terms of economy, in terms of infrastructure. A lot of things in the UK is failing. You may not see it because, like I said, when you look at where some of us are coming from, or some of you are coming from, because not all of us in the UK actually come directly from Africa. Some of us came from other European countries, right? Not everyone you see in the UK with this thing called or come from Africa directly, you know, to UK. So when you people look at where you are coming from, you will always want to see UK as the best. No, it's not the best. It is failing drastically. NHS has been on the decline for God knows how many years. They have been playing politics with everything and anything, with people's lives, people's benefits, everything. In fact, you know, immigration have been a serious problem in the UK for the past 3 to 4 years now. If you have been in the UK, let's say 20 years ago, 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, you will understand that UK is failing. Now, if you have been in the UK, let's say around 2017, 2016, 2018, 2019, up to 2020, you will know that UK has failed when you compare it to the UK of today. But like I said, you will not see it. You will not understand. Because when you look at where you're coming from, where dreams die even before the baby is born. That's where some of us or some of you are coming from. Then you see UK, that you can be almost anything you want. No, you cannot. You cannot be anything you want in the UK. You can only be what they want you to become in the UK. That's how it is. But you will not understand because you don't know that this is how their system is set up. Oh, you think there's no racism here? Who told you? Who told you? Maybe you are in the UK, you see that their judiciary system is working to an extent. You see that maybe their medical system is working, NHS, to an extent. You know, you see that their energy system is working to an extent. The amount of money we are paying in gas and electricity today, 3 years ago, wasn't the same. They have been increasing and increasing. Every April, they increase. Every year, they increase. If you take 50 quid to Tesco right now, what you buy with 50 quid last year would give you more. So UK is drastically failing. And those that have foresight to know that it's failing, and you see them, then the jackpot they got that place, which is not the answer for me, it's the answer for them. So the truth is UK is failing, and that's fact.
How do you think we should solve the declining birth rate? I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of TikTok videos, but also a lot of news about the panic that the declining birth rate is causing amongst politicians. There seems to be a real concern that we're not having enough babies. And as someone with quite good pattern recognition, I don't know why we're even having this discussion, because it's obvious to me why the birth rates are declining. Does anybody else experience this, where there's this uproar and politicians are going, we don't know why. People don't want to have babies anymore. We need them as economic slaves so we can all sit on mountains of wealth, but people aren't having the babies. Why? It seems really obvious. It seems really obvious. Does it seem obvious to you? Just quickly, I'm Kat. I talk about my ADHD, my self-diagnosed autism, and sometimes politics on here. If you like the sound of that, follow me. We can't afford them. We can't afford them, and there is no respect or accommodation for even those of us who are disabled in society, our societies are stripping away any sort of welfare and support for anybody who has a struggle. So why, in a million years, would people be committing to raising a human being without the finances, but also without the support of our culture and our politicians and our nation? Like, just have to look at how much people are not supported and how much they're stripping out of state and state support. Researching this a little bit this morning, in the UK, if a £35,000 salary in 2010 is the equivalent of a £53,000 salary in 2024, how many people are actually seeing 53k salaries advertised as freely as 35k salaries were advertised in 2010? Our wages are not keeping up with inflation. We're having a cost of living crisis. People don't have money. And when people are talking to politicians about this, it's like they gloss over this. In America, offered people $5,000 to have a baby, and I'm not even sure that covers the giving birth in America. There is this complete disconnect that the elites have with how little money we have. They keep taking it out, they keep hoarding it. There isn't enough wealth distributed amongst us. So if they want us to have babies, if they want us to improve the birth rate so they have more workers to make more money, they have to start giving us money back. It's so obvious. Who else feels that it's just so blindly obvious, and I don't understand why they're not doing it, or why they're complaining about it, because it's a problem that they caused at the top. Any thoughts on declining birth rate? Any thoughts on, if you're going to have kids, what is helping you make that decision? Let me know if you think about this. And if any fellow neurodivergent people who are just like, well, we don't have enough money, you've got to put more money back into the system, into the people, into the working people, and then we'll have more babies. It's so simple and so easy, but everybody in power seems to think that it's like this big deal that they need problem to solve that's complex. No, it's a very, very, very simple thing to fix the birth rate. Give people more money, a lot more money, and then they'll have babies. There you go, problem solved. I'll take a bow now.
I had a conversation with a girlfriend this morning, and it's raised some really interesting points that I want to explore. And I'm really keen to get your take on this, because I don't have loads of mum friends. I have a few, but I'm kind of having the same conversations with them. So I'm wondering if you are too. I personally think that is a very different world that we live in now to what typically our parents are. I'm 27 and my mum's in her early 60s. So just to give you a kind of gauge of the age gap that I'm talking about. Mums in their 30s, and then maybe their parents had them in their kind of 20s or 30s, that kind of range. So when I say that generation, that's what I'm talking about. I'm one of four. I've got 2 half siblings, 1 full sibling. My husband is one of 5. He's got 1 full sibling, 3 half siblings. We're from big families, and basically we always thought we wanted 3 children. I actually had a very traumatic birth, and that is hugely part of my decision to probably only have 2. I also have some serious long-term issues going on with my pelvis that probably mean that my next pregnancy won't be that great. So I've got other deciding factors, but take all that out of it. Conversations with other mums are all around the same kind of factors when it comes to why people don't want more children these days. I think a lot of it has to do with the expectation that we put on ourselves from social media. I actually haven't been doing that much on TikTok recently because I haven't had the energy, to be honest. And when you are on socials as a parent, and I literally have made this my whole life and business, so I'm obviously okay with it as the most part, but it's good to be able to look at things, right, and say why we feel a certain way about them. You are constantly comparing yourself to be the best mum, the mum that uses no screen time, the mum that gives them 3 healthy, balanced meals a day, cooked from scratch, the mum who masters the sleep, the mum who gets the right amount of fresh air for the child, the mum who does or doesn't put them into childcare. And all my mum friends agree with me. Our societal pressures that we put on ourselves because of socials are just monumental. Parents didn't have anyone to compare to. They just had their immediate friends who they spoke to, but they didn't have 1,000 strangers on the internet who were doing things a certain way. And you only ever see the good parts on socials, right? There's also, I think, the financial implications now, education, holidays, day-to-day living, the cost of living crisis, having extra bedrooms in your home. These are all things that I feel like you just used to get more for your money, and I'm sure some of you will tell me that is not the case, but that is my perception of things. You used to get more for your money, and people did just used to have more children because the kind of consequences of having more children wasn't as great. And I think now we're taught to expect so much from our lives and taught women should be out achieving things working as if they don't have children and having children as if they don't work. Consequences for us of having more children are greater. Layer onto that the fact that we seem to have maternal healthcare crisis in the UK as well. These are some of the reasons I just don't think people want to have more children. But I want to know what you think. Why do you think people aren't having more children in the UK? And did you have expectations to have more children and then change your mind, and for what reason?
Evening all. Let's talk about birth rate. Yes, I know that sounds like a bit of a dry subject, but it's important. It's not just important, it's absolutely vital. So the birth rate in the UK has been dropping for years. The birth rate across the whole Western world, in fact, the birth rate across much of the developed world, the entire developed world, has been dropping through the floor over the last 10, 20 years. But in the UK, it's dropped to 1.4 per family. Now, what they describe as the replacement birth rate, i.e. the number of babies that each family needs to have to maintain the population level, is between 2 and 2.1 per household. So we are miles short of that. 1.4 is the lowest level it's been in Britain. In many European countries, it's actually even lower than that, including, weirdly enough, some Catholic countries. So 1.4 is clearly not enough. So what's the solution to that? Well, the politicians, the vast majority of politicians anyway, certainly Labour and until very, very recently the Conservative Party and the Liberal Democrats, their solution was import migrant labour, import immigrants, import new people into the country. Why? Well, because our population, if you're only having 1.4 babies per family, is going to gradually get older and older and older because there's not enough youth being pushed into the population, and therefore the only way around that is to import youth, import workers, import new families, import young people. That's their solution, and it's happened in massive, massive, massive numbers. But is that the only solution? No, absolutely not. And it's the wrong solution, and we should not be doing it. We should be looking at absolutely radical changes to our society, to our culture, to our tax laws, and to our vision of what it means to be a successful and thriving country. Our population has grown from low 60 millions to, nobody really knows, but certainly into the 70 millions in the last 20 years alone. But population, and part of the reason for that is they say, well, more population, bigger population equals more money equals growth in GDP. But although our gross domestic product has got bigger, our gross domestic product per head, i.e. the amount of money per person in the country, has got smaller and smaller and smaller. So population does not equal success. My argument would be far, far better off being a much smaller country, a smaller population, but a thriving, successful, community-built population. If we could lose 10 million people from our population, and I'm not talking about culling people, so don't go down that road, but if we could somehow reduce our population by 10, 12, 15 million, get it back down to about the 60 million level, the country would be in a far, far, far healthier state. And we need to make sure that those people are British people, people that we are creating, that are born here, born to British families wherever possible, rather than just importing millions and millions and millions of people from overseas. How do we go about doing that? As I said, we have to make dramatic, radical changes to our tax system, radical changes to how the economy works, radical changes to how we educate children at school, radical changes to how we view the family, how we reward the family, radical changes to what we consider to be a family. We can make those changes. We just need to change things. We need to get back to a system whereby working families, whether that's just a dad and a mum that stays at home, is feasible. So that's about cost of living. It's about making housing affordable. How do you make housing affordable? You build a load more houses, and you don't import millions and millions and millions and millions of people that consume those houses. So that's one thing. Housing is a big issue. People don't have kids because they can't afford a house. They can't afford anywhere to live. They can't afford rents. Reduce the population, and that happens. Reduce the population and we can build enough houses. Reduce the population, demand for rental properties goes down, and therefore they become more affordable. So that's number one. Number two, the tax system. Reward people for having kids, but but only reward people that deserve to be rewarded. So number one, British citizens. Number two, people that are working and earning above a certain amount. Make it rewarding for them. Allow them to pay less taxes. Maybe allow the wife to be tax-free if she either doesn't work or only works part-time, and that allowance then gets passed on to the husband. Make childcare absolutely free for 35 hours a week for absolutely everyone, as long as they fit certain parameters. Completely free.
Because when I was young, most people expected that eventually they'd settle down, find someone, get married, start a family. That was the normal path. Today, not so much. I've got a grandson who's pushing 40. Lovely lad, works hard, good sense of humor. Yet he's still trying to navigate a world where relationships seem more complicated than launching a space rocket. At his age, I already had children. He's got 3 streaming subscriptions and a rising energy bill. And he's hardly alone. There are millions of people in Britain living by themselves. Many would like a partner. Many would like a family. But life keeps getting in the way. Housing costs, work pressures, financial uncertainty. The simple fact that everything now seems expensive. It's hard to think about children when you can't afford a home. It's hard to think about marriage when you're worried about paying next month's bills. And it's hard to build a future when the future itself feels uncertain. Romance is difficult when a 1-bedroom flat costs the same as a small kingdom. Then there's loneliness. People are supposedly more connected than ever. Phones, apps, social media, messages flying around the world in seconds, yet many people seem lonelier than previous generations. A strange irony. Never easier to contact people. Never harder to feel connected. Sometimes I think modern Britain has become very good at creating convenience, but not always very good at creating community. And that's why birth rates keep falling. Not necessarily because people don't want families, but because many feel they can't afford them, or can't find the stability they need, or simply haven't met the right person. For a country, that's a significant change, because children aren't just statistics. They're the future, the next generation, the people who'll keep the lights on when old codgers like me are long gone. A society that finds it harder and harder to form families eventually has to ask itself a difficult question. What changed? Perhaps it's housing. Perhaps it's economics. Perhaps it's culture. Perhaps it's all of them together. But whatever the reason, something important has shifted. And if my grandson ever does settle down, I'll be delighted. Though at this rate I may need to live to 120 to meet the great-great-grandchildren. Cheerio, and I will see you all in the next video, baby or not.